So just as we need to have a great list of primary sources to be able to write our chapters, we also need to be looking into secondary sources. So we're going to start that this week. So secondary sources are pieces that were created by someone who didn't experience firsthand or participate in the events that you're researching. So basically the idea is they're your peers, they're your colleagues in this research. You're looking at sources that were written by people who are studying the same types of things that you are studying, who have dealt with their own primary documents, written up their conclusions about the primary documents, and published them in some format. That format might be a book, it might be a feature article, a blog post, a documentary film. But your job in this area is to see kind of the state of the research. What is it that everyone else has done in the area or the general area that you are looking into? There's going to be very few sources that have done exactly what you're trying to do, but there's going to be a lot that's in the ballpark, in the general area. So what are we going for here? What you really want to be thinking about is, first, what's been published about my exact topic? And you want to be able to find the master list of that. Is there anyone who's done exactly what you're hoping to do? If they have, that doesn't mean that you're out of work. You can still do something, that's been done before and do it in your own way. But make a list. Who's done exactly what you want? Then, who's doing something that's similar and who's doing something that's kind of similar but is more about the kind of bigger idea behind your research. So we have New York City history would be a larger topic behind a lot of what you're doing. Food history is a larger topic behind what you're doing. Business trends. Where do you fall in these general categories, or can you think of other general categories? And so you want to be looking for secondary sources in those areas too. But where do we find them? How do we know how to search well? So one of the first things you can do before making your own list of great secondary sources is see if other people have made a great list of secondary sources related to your topic. So if we take the topic of immigration on the Lower East Side, we looked at the Tenement House Museum as a good source for archival primary sources. And we saw their website. And sometimes on these websites, for like museums and archival places like that, they also have their own bibliographies. So if we look here, this document is top 10 books about the Lower East Side, where now we can kind of use their guide to help us find secondary sources. These might not all be relevant, but there's a lot here. And if we can start with things like this, where people have already compiled things for us, that's really helpful. You'll be able to start to know where to begin your reading. Now, once you have a lot of things to read, what should you do besides reading? Well, big problem is sometimes you'll sit there with like 20 tabs open on your computer. You'll skim a lot, you'll learn a lot, and then 2 days later you'll be like, I know this thing now, but I don't remember where I learned that thing. In the old days, before Google Docs, we would have little boxes with index cards in them, and every time we would read a secondary source, we would put just one key fact or one key quote or one key detail onto one index card. And you format them kind of like this. And then you keep all of your index cards in a box, and they'd have tabs based upon the topic. Now, you could do that if you really want to, be old school about it, but it's not that necessary in a world that has Google Docs. So what I would do is think, how can you guys all create in your groups a similar system where each time you're reading a secondary source, any relevant fact, quote, detail that stands out to you, how can you put it and organize it into a systematic kind of compilation uh, organization plan? So what would you do? Use Google Drive, use a shared doc, use a shared folder, but you want something like this so that as you get these secondary sources and as you start reading them, you're not losing the information that you're reading. You're constantly compiling it in an easily accessible format. So you as a group have to really talk that through. So Based on this lesson, there's a few things you should be doing now. First, consider the larger research topics that are behind your specific focus and start looking for secondary sources about those. But like I said earlier, also just consider your exact focus. So if some of you are looking for the history of the milkshake, there might be a book on the history of the milkshake. I doubt it, but there might be an article on it or a website or a blog post. Find the things that are exactly what you're doing. Make a list of those. Make a list of the things that are kind of what you're doing. Then make a list of the things that are the kind of larger topics behind it. Get the sources, and then start taking notes in a document or a system that you've shared with me or your group, the class. Remember, the notes should be compiling information you need to be able to add context to your own original archival research. So we're not using secondary sources as the research. They're kind of helping you become the experts in this topic so that you know where there are gaps. Meaning, what have other people done? What have other people already written? And then when you know that, you'll also know what they haven't written. And that helps you find your own place within this overall topic. So in class tomorrow, you'll work together to start finding sources, and then you'll work together to start creating a system for taking notes, and you'll start taking notes. Don't do any other work beyond watching this video and maybe starting to think about what to do in class tomorrow, but when you come in, you'll have 15 minutes to get going on researching secondary sources as well as primary sources.